Welcome to College Football Now. We do this every Wednesday at 3:30. I'm Brant Parsons, along with Matt Murschel. We'll take questions live throughout the show. If you're on Facebook Live, we have Twitter question already in the hole to pick out this week. And we're making our picks on the show. Last year we did a bunch of other stuff. This year we're just sticking to we're going to pick the games and, see who's the smarter one. And then after that, and we'll take Facebook Live questions. I've got this contraption here. I can see when Facebook Live questions pop up. We will integrate that as we go. But the season starts.
Yes.
Thursday night is finally here.
Finally here.
There's a game in Sydney. We know there's already a game in the books. We both picked it right. But the season starts Thursday night.
Yeah, and we finally get a chance to really get things kicked off. No more promos, no more previews, no more this is what might happen. We actually get to see live college football Thursday night. And we have really a great weekend of college football. We talked about Thursday night, maybe about 10 to 12 games. Friday night's got a handful of great games. Saturday's got a bevy of wonderful games. And then Sunday night, we get that great Notre Dame Texas matchup, followed by, all capped off on Monday night here in Orlando, Florida State and Ole Miss.
And as I said, throughout the show, if you have any questions on Facebook Live, go ahead and ask them. I'm going to ask you the first question because we're starting on Thursday night. South Carolina at Vanderbilt, 8 p.m. start. It's on ESPN. Will Muschamp making his debut as the head coach of the Gamecocks. They've won 7 straight in this series, 14 of the last 16 meetings between the two. And against teams that they've played at least 10 times, nobody owns a team like South Carolina, like Vanderbilt for South Carolina. This is a team they consistently beat. They play well against them. I guess that's a good recipe for Will Muschamp's first game as the new ball coach at South Carolina.
Yeah, I think so. I think this game, a lot of people might just look over this game by saying, listen, it's South Carolina, it's Vanderbilt. Both these two teams aren't ranked. They're probably going to end up being in this bottom half of the SEC East race. Not even a factor. But I look at this game with interest because look at Vanderbilt. I think Derek Mason's done a pretty good job the first couple of years. I know the record hasn't shown it so much, but I think he's finally got this team where he wants it to be at. I think this is a game right now where Vanderbilt is a much better team. I think this is a game where Vanderbilt could win, beating South Carolina. I know that, again, you talked about how much this program is, how much South Carolina has owned Vanderbilt. I like what Derek Mason's been able to do. I like what he's done, especially on the defensive side of the ball. That's his forte. I look at South Carolina. They still have some question marks going into this season. I like Vanderbilt in this game.
Wrong! Doing the McLaughlin Group
tribute
there. I say South Carolina. This is a team that knows how to beat Vanderbilt, and I like what Will Muschamp is going to be able to do in South Carolina. I already have them in a bowl game in my bowl projections. This is our first disagreement of the year. I have South Carolina beating Vanderbilt. We have a Facebook Live question from Tony Gibbs. Fittingly, before we start going into our state teams, who will win in Dublin, Ireland? The game between Georgia and Boston. As some of the T-shirts say Georgia versus Boston.
Georgia versus
of course,
Boston.
It's Georgia Tech, Boston College kicks off Saturday, 7:30 our time, local Eastern time.
A.M. Make sure
7:30 in the morning.
7:30
A.M. The game takes place in Dublin. But the question that he asks, who will win that game?
I like Georgia Tech in this game. I think, you look at what I know last year wasn't kind of the type of season that I'm sure Paul Johnson would have liked to have had tons of injuries. They lost so much talent at different positions. I think that, Georgia Tech comes back this year with a healthy squad. Justin Thomas back at quarterback. I like what they're able to do. I think that Steve Adagio's done a good job with Boston College. And I think that what the interesting side note on that game will be who takes off at quarterback. Patrick Towles, the former Kentucky player quarterback, is going to be probably getting most of the snaps in that game. He provides that team with a little bit of a different look offensively. Scott Loeffler comes in at offensive coordinator as well. They lost Don Brown, though, as defensive coordinator. And last year, I think a lot of people will be surprised to know, Boston College had one of the top 3 defenses in the country because of Don Brown. But he's gone. So I like Georgia Tech in this game. I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be a close game, kind of similar to what we saw a couple of years ago when UCF and Penn State played in Ireland.
I'm going to take Georgia Tech in that game. Also, thanks for the question, Tony. Another question right now. JD Prevost on Facebook Live asks, can Chad Kelly take advantage of Florida State's defense athleticism if they over-pursue, or is FSU's defense that good and it doesn't matter?
Well, I think he can. I think that's one of the things that Chad Kelly's been able to do the last year especially, where he had that breakout season. He's going to get there's going to be some young players on that defensive side of Florida State, especially in the secondary. I think they're going to want to be aggressive, especially early on. I think in the atmosphere, under the lights in Orlando, I think they're going to want to try to make some big plays early on. I think Chad Kelly can get the ball to his wide receivers. I think if I'm Ole Miss, I take shots down the field early on. I want to go deep. I want to make sure that I'm testing that secondary because, again, Jalen Ramsey's gone. Derwin James is a good player, but you're going to have to test those spots, test those corners to make sure you get the ball down the field. I think if they do that early especially, I think that opens the game up a little bit. They could take advantage maybe of their running game, which isn't probably their forte so much so this season, but that opens up a lot more things to do offensively if they can stretch the field.
And we'll have our FSU Ole Miss pick later on in the program. But thanks, JD, for the question. You can ask questions on Facebook Live throughout this show. This is not a question, but it leads into our next game we're going to pick. Clint Updike says, "Go Gators." Gators open the season Saturday night at home against UMass. And we're making picks this show. I think we're both agreeing that we're taking Florida, but what are you watching for in this game?
Well, I'm looking forward to see, I think most people, you want to see how Luke Del Rio performs at quarterback. I think this is an opportunity for him to really kind of set his identity at that position. I think everyone knows that it's key for the Florida to get the quarterback position nailed down early on because when you look at their schedule, they're going to have some challenges. They're going to face a Kentucky team that's a much improved Kentucky team. They're going to face Tennessee, which has been picked to win the SEC East, and is probably going to be one of their stiffest challenges early on. They've got to get Luke Del Rio comfortable behind center, make sure he can get the ball out to his wide receivers. He's going to have Antonio Callaway back, Brandon Powell. He needs to make sure that he finds his way and gets that offense the way he wants it to be as they move forward. This is a great opportunity. He should be able to get that done. You'd think by halftime. You think this game would kind of maybe be settled in. If not, I think there are going to be some bigger concerns going into the third and fourth quarter.
Speaking of games that could be over by halftime, let's start another state game. Miami hosts FAMU on Saturday evening, 6 p.m. on ESPN3. Again, our picks for the pick segment, we're both taking Miami in this one, but the Mark Richt era begins for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, it really does. And I think this is an exciting time to be a Miami Hurricane fan because you look at the fact that Mark Richt comes into this program. We've seen the enthusiasm he's instilled in the program. You've seen the fact that the fan base really feels alive. They've gone out and I think they've sold almost 40,000 season tickets. That's nearly double what they had last season. Fans want to see this team, get to that next level, and I think Mark Richt will provide that. You look at their offense, Brad Kaya is probably going to be much improved. Richt's now being the play caller for the offense. I think you'll see him develop into that kind of elite quarterback. I think everyone knows he can perform. The biggest question mark in at least the first couple of games of the season is that defense because they've lost some key contributors, guys who were kicked off the team this last week, and I think that Miami really needs to come out and set the tone in this game early on. They need to establish some depth. That's what these kind of games are for. You pretty much assume you're going to win the game. You just need to be able to get some younger guys some playing time so you can establish some of that depth when you move on to some of the bigger games.
Of course, I picked Miami in that game. Also, Towson at USF, Saturday evening game, 7 p.m. kickoff, ESPN3. Watching this game, obviously, a UCF rival and a state team, but USF trying to build off last season as this year begins.
Yeah, this is another, we talk about programs with a lot of expectations going into the season. I think USF is one of them. I think a lot of people feel this team, including myself, that they could probably have a good chance to win the American. They can, maybe play in a pretty significant bowl game. But you look at the fact that Willie Taggart's done a pretty good job last year. He's got lots of expectations. Quentin Flowers comes in at quarterback. He's been able to do some really good things as well. Having that year as a starter under his belt is going to make that next year be so much better. Marlon Mack, talented running back, over 1,000 yards. They've got talented wide receiver. Their offensive line, is kind of rebuilt. You look at their defense. The defense is going to be much better. 4-2-5 system that they put in, last season did a great job of helping them, become more aggressive. Instead of reacting, they were more attacking. They were able to get those turnovers. They were able to take advantage of that and to get some sort of field position for the team as well. I think this is a good start for them. I think like a lot of these games early on, like we mentioned, you just want to get this to make sure nobody gets hurt, and you want to make sure that you get those guys plenty of reps and they get the feel of the offense and the defensive schemes, and you build some depth.
South Carolina State begins UCF's new era as their opponent on Saturday night, a 7 p.m. start, ESPN3. Last year, maybe we wouldn't have been making a sure pick of UCF. We both have UCF picked in this game. But again, watching this one for the Scott Frost there and see what is UCF going to look like even now with the new coach, new strategy, new ideas, everything there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what everyone is paying attention to is, how will this team perform? I think for me, that's what I want to see in the first quarter. I want to see, do they have problems? Do they run into those false start penalties? Do they run into situations where maybe players aren't sure where they're supposed to be at? You would like to believe that after a full fall camp that these guys would be ready to go, and I'm sure they will be after the first game or so. But this is a chance really to get those nerves out of the system, to really get yourself out there and see what's going on. And it also offers an opportunity to see what kind of play calling Scott Frost and his staff are going to be able to do offensively. I'm sure he's not going to, open up the playbook and show everything in this first game because obviously you've got Michigan next week. But I think this gives an opportunity for some guys to get some playing time. Justin Holman, how does he fit into this offense? Is he going to develop, become that elite quarterback that we see in the American? You look at the running attack, they need to get a running back to establish himself as well. And then defensively, this defense needs to attack. We talked about USF, what they were able to do last year. I think UCF needs to be the same way. They need to be able to attack, not react. They need to get those turnovers. They need an established field position. I think if you do all those things, I think UCF is going to have a good start to the season.
We are doing Facebook Live, and we do have a question on UCF from Sean Pitts. He wants to know, I'm sure he asked this because he knows we'll have fun with it.
8 teams now, possible expansion candidates. They've nailed it, and they've narrowed it down from 6 to 8 teams. UCF, I think, listed as reportedly as one of those teams as well. Houston was named. I think SMU listed, that sort of situation. I think right now, again, it's just depends on what's going to happen with the Big 12 presidents. They have to decide, are these the top candidates? Are these the schools we want to interview or talk with? I know Bob Bowlesby, Big 12 commissioner, had hinted that they want to have this process done or over with before the season started. It looks like it's not going to happen unless something happens the next day or two. So this is something that's probably going to drag on, at least for the first couple of weeks of the season. I mean, it could even go as long, someone even hinted, I think it was the Iowa State president, it maybe can go on as long as to Christmas. So I think we'll still be talking about Big 12 expansion in the next coming weeks, which is too bad, honestly, because, again, you want to be talking about football. You want to be talking about what's going on in the field. Yes, this is an important situation, important decision to be made for not only the Big 12, but for these schools. But again, right now it's about the football on the field. You hate to see that being taken away with this sort of dragging out this decision.
They better not break the announcement when we're watching Charlie Brown Christmas at my house or The Grinch, because that's special time. And if they decide they're going to make that announcement, then that'll really.
But imagine,
ruin
imagine the fun and the awe in the eyes of presidents and athletic directors as they opened up the envelope on Christmas Day and it says you have received an invitation to join the Big 12. It's like. And again, because we lost Gene Wilder this week, it's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You get that golden ticket.
Another question on Facebook Live from JD Prevost, and this is for you. Are there any sleeper teams who are currently not in the top 25 that you could see making it into the top 10 before the end of the season?
Oh, in the top 10? I think you're looking at some teams maybe. Well, I mean an SEC team like Arkansas, maybe, they're kind of on that edge, being on the top 25 and a little bit outside. I don't know if they can get to top 10. I think their schedule is really difficult because they have to face TCU as non-conference, Texas Tech as well. I like that going on. I'm going to throw a team out there that not a lot of people are talking about but could make a big push, is Texas. If Texas seems to get things together, if they've got the right quarterback, if they find their offense, under Sterling Gilbert, that's the more of a fast-paced type offense, I think there's enough talent there under Charlie Strong that Texas can make a big push. Listen, in the Big 12, all you got to do is knock off an Oklahoma, maybe beat a Baylor, and you're right there. You're probably going to find yourself ranked in the top 15. So I would throw probably Texas and Arkansas as the two schools.
Back to the game Saturday night on the Plains in Alabama, number 2 Clemson at Auburn. Sean White, surprisingly perhaps, gets the nod as the Auburn quarterback. And an interesting stat before I get your pick. Dabo Swinney is 9-6 all time against Auburn as a player, as an assistant coach, and as a head coach. Whether he played in a game or coached a game, he's 9-6. When he was a redshirt freshman, he didn't play. They lost that one. So he knows Auburn well from his time, of course, playing and coaching at Alabama and at Clemson. This is an old-time rivalry being renewed this season. But beyond that, this is our first look at a team that you believe is the top team in the country. But our first look to see, is Clemson going to be able to perform like they did last year? Are they the real deal? Are they a national title contender?
Yeah, and you talk about a hard road really for Clemson. You open up on the road in a really hostile crowd at Auburn. I mean, again, it's not like you get the chance to open up at home. You're going to be on the road. You've got lots of expectations hanging over this team. Deshaun Watson is probably, the top candidate for the Heisman Trophy going into the season. If he has a spectacular game this weekend, he's more than likely going to really kind of jet up to that spot as well. This is a game that I think if I'm Clemson, you just want to make sure you do what you know you can do best, and that's use Deshaun Watson. Get him out there. Make sure he can make those plays. Make sure your offense runs the way you want it to. Make sure your defense, which is going to be younger than it was last year, make sure those guys don't miss their assignments. Make sure they take care of the football. Make sure that they go after the quarterback. Again, you're taking an Auburn team, which we've seen what they've been able to do in the past, but as you mentioned, Sean White comes in. He's been named the starter. He doesn't necessarily strike fear, I don't think, in anyone's hearts right now as a quarterback.
Wow, Auburn fans.
Maybe for Auburn fans. But, you've got some other guys on that team. I think John Franklin III is one that comes to mind who will probably present them with a little wildcat package here and there. I think that could be a challenge as well. I think this is a game, again, if Clemson if this game isn't a blowout, I think after this game, I think people will wonder what's wrong with Clemson. If they only win by 7 points or 10 points, I think people want to know why they didn't win by more. But I think this game could be close, especially early on.
I think Clemson wins this game, and I think they win this game convincingly. I'm going to upset some Auburn people we know maybe, but Clemson is just loaded at all the important positions. They have the best player in the country at quarterback, and you have an Auburn defense that has some question marks. There are question marks on offense. When I look at this game, I'm just wondering how long I'm going to be watching it until I turn it over to a different game.
And that's another thing that could happen.
Clemson's going to be up big.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, this game, I think Clemson's defense, or I think Auburn's defense is a little bit better than it was last year. I don't think they had so much injury concerns as they had. You hope that this game is somewhat close. But again, Deshaun Watson, from everything he's been reading and hearing, is playing a lot better than he was last year. He had a great stretch at the end, 4 games. Really, if they had voted later, I think that Heisman, he could have easily been voted the Heisman. I think if he continues that going into this game, I think Auburn's in for some trouble.
I've been asked the game I'm really looking forward to, and it's the first game on Saturday at 12 o'clock on ABC. Number 3 Oklahoma versus number 15 Houston. Of course, Houston, the team last year, the group of 5, the one that made it into the New Year's Six Bowls and then beat Florida State. Oklahoma, a team that made it to the playoffs before losing to Clemson. Baker Mayfield comes back for them at quarterback. Greg Ward, quarterback Houston. Lots of experience on both sides. You and I are both very high on Oklahoma heading into this year, and they're going to get tested right out of the gates.
Yeah, they really are. You face a team that is probably one of the hottest teams in college football, and a team I'm sure that Bob Stoops would rather not have to open up against, because you want to at least give your team an opportunity maybe to get their feet on the ground before they have to face a team like this. But I think if there's one advantage that Bob Stoops and Oklahoma has in this game is they faced a quarterback very similar to Greg Ward and Deshaun Watson, the player we just talked about. I mean, again, very strong arm, very mobile, able to kind of take advantage of his arm and his feet. I think Greg Ward fits that mold very well, and I think that will help them a little bit understand what they're going to need to kind of contain him a little bit. But this Houston team is not just Greg Ward. They've got great skill at the running back position. They're good, on the defensive side of the football. This is at a neutral site. It's in Houston, so it'll probably be a very strong Houston crowd going into this game. So again, if you're Oklahoma, you want to come out with a win here, and you want to make sure that this starts it off right, because down the road, Ohio State is right around the corner, and that's going to be a big game as well.
I'm taking Oklahoma in this one also, but this was one that I spent a little bit of time working on my picks and wondering, because I know Houston, what they were able to do last year, they're not going to be intimidated in this game coming off their performance against Florida State last year in the bowl game, and they're not going to be intimidated by Oklahoma. But in the end, Sooners just a little bit deeper maybe, a little bit more tools, and they pull off. This is going to be a close game in my opinion, and that's why it's one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most on Saturday. Number 16, UCLA visits Texas A&M, 3:30 p.m. on CBS. And our first look at a team that some people, you among them, feel is a contender in the Pac-12 to not just win it, but possibly even work themselves into the playoff discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you look at UCLA, Josh Rosen, we saw last year as a freshman, had a pretty solid season, made some mistakes as you would associate with being young, but he's got a year under his belt. I think that'll help them out as well. They go on the road. I think this game, as much as I think UCLA will win it, this is an interesting game for me to look at for the Texas A&M point, because you got a guy in Kevin Sumlin, a coach who's really kind of a little bit on the hot seat going into the season. I think a lot of people are wondering just what is going to happen with this program. He had lots of question marks, had some high-profile players transfer out, 2 quarterbacks, in fact, as well. He's going to be heading out with Trevor Knight, former Oklahoma quarterback, who transferred in to be his leader. Again, this is an opportunity for Texas A&M maybe to show what they can do this season. If they struggle in this game, I think it's going to be a long year for the Aggies. But I think, again, it's a bigger point when you look at the fact that UCLA wants to get a win to show the Pac-12 is kind of maybe a little bit of a step above the SEC coming out of this game.
And I'm picking Texas A&M, and if in the graphic already gave my pick away, but Texas A&M, I'm picking them. They're the home team. They do well in home openers, and we're moving on. LSU, I guess I'll make my picks first. Number 5, LSU against Wisconsin. Another 3:30 game on Saturday. This one on ABC. A little fact I like on this one: Bart Houston will start for Wisconsin in this game at quarterback, named after legendary quarterback Bart Starr, who played for the Green Bay Packers, who played at Lambeau Field, which is where this game is being played. To me, I'm picking Wisconsin over LSU. This is my surprise pick of any. And because it's going to be a home game, and Corey Clement is healthy at least now, if he can stay healthy through the year is the key for the Badgers. But when he goes for over 100 yards, Wisconsin is 8-0, and I think that he will be enough to control the tempo, keep Leonard Fournette on the bench a little bit. I'm not a believer in Brandon Harris yet, until he can prove me otherwise. I'm going to be a little skeptical, but I'm taking Wisconsin to beat LSU.
Well, I think LSU wins this game. I mean, you look at what Leonard Fournette's been able to do. He started out really great. You look at last year, I think almost 70% of his yardage was done, in the first half of the season. He kind of petered out towards the end when he ran into that Alabama defense later on. But I think, Brandon Harris is another year under his belt that way, as we mentioned before. I think gives him an opportunity maybe to find some wide receivers. They need to open up the offense a little bit, because I think that opens up some running lanes for Leonard Fournette. And I think that'll create an opportunity for them to put together some of these long drives, because that's what they really need to do. They need to go out there and put together a 10, 12, 14-play drive, which kind of eats up clock as well, because I think that's what LSU can do better with that. And now one thing I'm also looking forward to is LSU's defense. Listen, Dave Aranda, who was Wisconsin's defensive coordinator, by the way, has come over to take over that defense. And I think he's done an amazing job when he was with the Badgers the last couple of years. They had one of the top rushing defenses. I think now that he's with LSU, I expect to see this defense to be really tough. I think they're going to really kind of attack Bart Houston, make sure they kind of cause some disruptions there, make sure he maybe makes a mistake here or there. And I think also he knows exactly what Wisconsin will probably throw at Leonard Fournette. So I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a trade secret that's probably going to go on the offensive side of the ball, and that'll open up the game as well. But I think LSU wins this game. I think it's going to be close, though. I don't think it's going to be a runaway. I think this is going to be a tight game down to the stretch. And Les Miles, LSU coach, has already said, I don't want to see anyone do the Lambeau leap. If you jump into the crowd, you're going to need your thumb, because you're going to be hitchhiking back to Baton Rouge.
And Les Miles will be on the hot seat again after this one. Number 18, Georgia versus number 22, North Carolina, 5:30 start on ESPN. They're battling for the old leather helmet trophy.
Okay.
I can't make this up. This is the official trophy that they're playing for. Apparently they put the helmet on after whoever wins. Grayson Lambert getting a start for the Bulldogs. Mitch Trubisky takes over quarterback for the Tar Heels. I'm picking North Carolina in this game, not for either of those guys, but because of Elijah Hood and the running game of North Carolina. They've shown that they can put up a lot of points under Fedora at North Carolina. They will continue to be able to do that. Kirby Smart will change Georgia and get them back, but not yet, not in the first game. I'm going with the Tar Heels.
Yeah, I like Georgia in this game. I just, you look at the fact that, it's Kirby Smart's first game, I get that, but he's a defensive-minded coach. He spent a lot of time under, Nick Saban at Alabama. I think Georgia's defense is going to be much better. I think Grayson Lambert gives them a solid playmaker, behind center. I know Jacob Eason was the incoming freshman that everyone felt like would probably get the start, including myself, would probably get the start in this game. But I think you'll see Eason at some point in this game, at some point in this season. I think he's the future of Georgia football. I think Lambert just gives them a guy who's got, playing experience. He's going to be able to provide them with a little bit of a calm demeanor when they take off in this game. And I look for Nick Chubb to possibly get an opportunity to kind of return back. He's a good, was hurt in the Tennessee game last year, had a bad knee injury. He's come back. He's supposed to be healthy. I'd like to see him get an opportunity to play as well. And then you talked about Elijah Hood. I mean, you got Elijah Hood from North Carolina, Nick Chubb from Georgia. This is going to be probably a grind 'em up, smash mouth type old school football.
Number 20 USC, number 1 Alabama. 8 o'clock on ABC on Saturday night, and I'm picking Alabama in this game. And what shocks me is how easy it is to pick Alabama when you think about any other team out there. If you told me they were not returning their starting quarterback, their Heisman Trophy running back was gone, all these players on defense were gone, and you look at Nick Saban, you look at Alabama, and you think, he's just going to reload, and they're number 1 team in the country heading into the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Nick Saban does. That's what Alabama has been able to do over the last couple of years, is because they get those 5-star kids to come in, and they're there. If those guys aren't playing, they're on the bench right behind a guy. So once that guy leaves, they're willing to step up and move ahead. This, to me, game, I like Alabama in this game, and what I'm interested in looking at is who does get the start for the Crimson Tide at quarterback. Is it going to be a guy like Cooper Bateman, who we saw very briefly last year in the Ole Miss game, or is it going to be a guy like Jalen Hurts, who's a highly touted freshman who could step in? I also look at their running back situation. Who are the guys that are going to probably be the playmakers? My guess is it's going to be kind of by rotation. He's going to have different guys come in and see whichever one's.
Already started on a very close game. You're on the road. It's Sunday night. It's the only game going on. You have to feel that the folks in Austin will be going crazy for this game. But when I look at the two teams and how they match up, Notre Dame just seems a little bit bigger and better at the positions where they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I got Notre Dame in this game as well, but I think the interesting fact is we could actually see 4 quarterbacks play in this game. Brian Kelly's already said Deshaun Kaiser, Malik Zaire, we're going to get probably a chance to play for Notre Dame. Charlie Strong said that we'll probably see Shane Buechele, the talented freshman quarterback, get a chance to play, as well as Tyrone Sue. So again, they're going to be the quarterback position seems to be the key question mark going into this game, and something I'll be looking forward to.
And last game we're going to pick Monday night right here in Orlando, Camping World Stadium, over at the Citrus Bowl. For those that remember it being called that, I'm not paid to call it either one. Number 4 Florida State against number 11 Ole Miss, 8 p.m. kick on ESPN. I know you're excited about this game because you're going to have some great stories leading into it, during the game, everything. This is Labor Day. This is the college football's Monday Night Football. It is the game that everybody is going to be watching. Is going to get a ton of play. It's a big game. It's a huge game for Florida State. I am taking the Seminoles in this game. I picked the Seminoles to win all their games until they get into the playoffs. I have them having a very strong year because of Dalvin Cook. I like DeAndre Francois. I think he's going to be able to settle in. I've been calling Florida State one of the teams to beat this year since last year because they're so talented. But what a test to open up with a relative home game. It's a few-hour drive. It's going to be a lot of Florida State fans. It's going to be a lot of garnet and gold in that crowd. It's going to be a sellout crowd, most likely. It's going to be packed. Not an easy test, but I have Florida State knocking off Ole Miss to start off their season well.
Yeah, I got Florida State too, but I'm with you. This game is, you talk about what better showcase to end up this great, stellar weekend of college football is to have Florida State and Ole Miss. I mean, I think both these two teams figure at some point they're going to be competing for the college football playoff. I think expectations are a little bit higher for the Seminoles to get to that spot. You got a guy in Dalvin Cook who had over 1,600 yards. He's probably going to be mentioned in the Heisman Trophy race for most of the season unless he gets hurt. You look at DeAndre Francois, a young talented quarterback, first freshman to start a season for the Seminoles since Jameis Winston did. So again, lots of expectations for Florida State. And then you look at Ole Miss. Ole Miss has Chad Kelly. They feature one of the top offenses in the SEC. I think they have question marks going into this season. I think one of the biggest ones hanging over them is the NCAA situation. So this, to me, has got the feel of a bowl game. It's got the feel of almost like a championship game.
And as I said, we've taken some Facebook Live questions. We did have one Twitter question beforehand. We're not going to ignore that. We're going to hit upon that. It's a question I really enjoyed from Cam Nareheim. Among teams in the Sunshine State, there's a lot of them, who is the best situation at quarterback as we get ready to break open a new college football season? So out of Florida State, Florida, UCF, which team do you see, and I have an answer for it too, but among those teams, has the best situation at quarterback?
Well, I think it's got to be Miami. I mean, you look at what Brad Kaya has been able to do, the last couple of years. I think he provides a lot of stability. Mark Richt is going to come in and be his offensive coordinator, work with him as with the quarterback's position. I think Kaya is really the most solid, quarterback, in the state, Florida, unfortunately, Luke Del Rio, we haven't seen at all really. DeAndre Francois hasn't taken very many snaps at Florida State. You look at UCF, Justin Holman, maybe you could throw him in as well as being a guy who's pretty solid. He played obviously the last couple of years, but he's running a whole new offensive system. And then Quentin Flowers has only had 1 year, so I think it's got to be Brad Kai at Miami, and I think that's another reason why I had Miami in my preseason top 25, because I felt like he provides them with a lot more stability at that position than any other team in the state.
And I agree with you. I say Brad Kai and Miami as the best situation right now, but don't sleep on UCF and Justin Holman. We haven't seen the new offense yet, but this could be just the offense for him. Could not be the offense for him. But I like the Justin Holman with the experience there. Certainly not on the Miami level. I mean, coming off an 0-12 season, you can't say too much about it. But Brad Kaya, I think, is the most solid guy heading into the season. But as the year goes on, any of those other schools, obviously Florida State, Francois, he has the potential to be a game-changing quarterback. Del Rio in Florida. But keep your eye on Justin Holman. That's what I want to see on Saturday, too, is to see how he plays in this new offense. But I think for the answer to this question on Twitter, I would go with Miami, but there's some that are very close because Brad Kaya hasn't yet taken that leap to where I think he should be able to make the leap. He may under Rick, but he hasn't gotten there yet.
But I will say, one of the nice things about this, as much as there's some uncertainty at these other schools, that this opens up the door for next season, the future-wise, of having a really lot of talented quarterbacks being in the state of Florida again. Because if Del Rio continues on, you look at what happens there, there's the possibility we could see some great quarterbacks next season as well.
You want to do this again next Wednesday?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it next Wednesday.
Every Wednesday at 3:30, we're going to be taking your questions and making picks. And if you have a second, you got to follow this guy on Twitter. He is named one of the people to follow in college football on Twitter. It's a list that he deserved to be on a few years ago.
And not one that I made myself.
And not his own list. It was like a real list. It was like
a real list.
Like people actually came together and put it together and made it and published it, and it's real. It's Athlon, and they say follow him. So do so at OS Matt Murchell. You'll be thankful, and then send me a tweet thanking me for making that recommendation.
There you go.
My Twitter's terrible. But next week we'll be back at 3:30 to do this live all again. For Matt Murchell and Brant Parsons, thanks for watching at OrlandoSentinel.com.